Today we're going to be looking in Matthew chapter 24. So if you have your Bible, I invite you to open to Matthew chapter 24. This is the so-called Olivet Discourse, where Jesus is going to give us the longest message about end times and prophecy that he gives throughout the New Testament. So it's going to be, we're not going to be able to cover it all, but we'll get a good feel. And it's such a comfort to know that God already sees the future. He knows what's going to happen from beginning to end. He can know anything he wants to know. God doesn't know things that he doesn't want to know, but if he wants to know something, he can certainly know it. He can know everything about everything. And he definitely knows about this because he's given us information about the end times, the end of this age, and the things that will be taking place. And he does this privately to his disciples because he wants his disciples to be steady during these difficult times that we're going to go through, the world is going to go through. It isn't something negative, it's something positive, because there's something new that's going to come out of the difficulties. It's like having a baby. There's a lot of pain as she starts, having to carry the baby for 9 months or 8 months. And then when the baby is ready to be born, there's a lot of pain. But there's a new life. And once the pain is over, there's something completely beautiful and new. And this world is sort of like that. The world we see now, we don't see it in its completed state. We see a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties. People, their hearts fail because of fear. There's things geopolitically happening all over the world that really, have a tendency to freak everyone out, including myself. When you see the wars and the rumors of wars and the upheavals and diseases and pandemics and, economy, different things for different people, it's easy to get shaken. And so the Lord knows this. He knows what he has to do. It's just like once you get pregnant, you know what you have to do. You might not like that last, few hours when the baby's coming out, because it's extremely painful. And some women get very anxious about that because it's going to be so painful. But you have to do it. You have to go through it. And so Jesus tells his disciples basically the same thing. The world has to go through it before he returns and establishes his kingdom. So it's not something to get you afraid. It's something to strengthen you and to stabilize you, because it's going to shake. Things are going to shake. And when they're shaking, you're going to understand who's shaking it, that it's not God being surprised, something he didn't know. Oh, look what's happening to the poor earth. I had no idea. No, not at all. It's actually he's the one that's making it happen so that he could accomplish his will. So it's comforting to know that your God, the God that knows you, loves you, and lives in you, is going to walk you through it, and that these things were necessary to take place. So Jesus takes them to the Mount of Olives, and this is right before he's going to be crucified. And there's so much here, so much symbolism. But his last visit to the temple, we're going to read about it. It's over. He's completing and fulfilling the old covenant, and it's not very pretty. He's having a lot of conflict with the religious establishment, and they are completely rejecting him. If you want to know how Jesus feels about religion, read chapter 23 and how he feels, because that's the big conflict he's having with religious people that want to be like God, and they want to be at the center, and they want the people to come worship them and their system and their whole denomination, versus their Messiah, the one who saves. They don't want him. They don't want the Lord. They want this system, this religion. It's more comfortable. And so you see, he makes his last trip to the temple, and then he leaves the temple. And it's, you could see it sort of as a picture of the end of the Old Testament, the Old Covenant. And he's going to inaugurate a new covenant as if we were to keep going, when he gets crucified. And he rises from the dead. And there's a completely new relationship now that a person can have with God. And his kingdom is now coming. And then what's happening is the gospel is going global. And it's spreading all over the world. And when the gospel gets preached to the rest of the world so that everybody gets the opportunity to hear and make a decision if they're going to receive him or they're going to reject him, then that'll be the end of the age. So, all right. So let's read our text here. Matthew chapter 24. We'll read the first 14 verses. Verse 1, Matthew 24. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple. And his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down." Verse 3, now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" So 3 questions. And the whole chapter is really answering those 3 questions. Verse 4, and Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and will deceive many. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Then many false prophets will arise and deceive many. And because lawlessness is going to abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." All right, so as I said, in the first couple of verses, it's sort of a background. But even let's go back to chapter 23, and just let me read this. Listen to what Jesus says, so you get a little flow. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem," this is Matthew 23:37. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings. But notice this, the free will of man. But you were not willing." Now, that is such an important phrase to really see this, that they were not willing. God gives a person free will, and they're going to choose their life. They're going to choose their life with him or without him, or they're going to create a God in their own head that only exists in their head, where they think that they are with him, but they're really not with him. And this is what Satan is very clever to do this. He gets people to believe that they're okay, but they're not willing to come to Jesus. This is the issue, and have a personal relationship with Jesus. But look at verse 38, because they were not willing, and we understand this. If there's a cute guy and you're at a graduation and you see this cute guy and he's in your class and you're graduating, you see them and you might say, "It's the end of the year, I better say something." And you hand this cute guy a little note or something. "Hey, maybe we can connect during the summer now that school's out. No, I'm good. I got a girlfriend already. Oh, okay, heartbreak. Or they could say, yeah, you know what? I am talking to this guy, but there's nothing serious. Yeah, I'll go out. I'll have coffee with you during the, you make a choice. You're willing. You make, who do you want a relationship with in your life? What kind of people do you want relationships with? Well, that's common sense, right? You make choices. I don't want to have a relationship with this person. They talk too much. This person's toxic. This person is just damaged. They got a damaged, weird personality. I don't want to hang around with them. So everyone's making decisions on who they're willing to have a relationship and the level. Well, you know what? This might be a news alert, but God is the same. He makes decisions. He reaches out to people. He tells them he loves them. He wants a relationship with them. But if that person is, no, I'm not interested, he says how often I would have gathered Jerusalem, Israel. He is their Messiah. He came to save them. He would have gathered them like a hen gathered her chicks to protect them. But they were not willing. They didn't want that. And as a result, he sees the future. Verse 38, see, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Now this is after Palm Sunday. So this is a future event because they've rejected him for the last time. Jesus is now moving on. And then in verse 1 of Matthew 24, he's going to predict the destruction of this temple. This is the last time he's leaving. The old covenant is ending. Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to show him the buildings of the temple. So just try to picture, I thought of the Beverly Hillbillies. How many of you remember the Beverly Hillbillies? Okay. And they were hillbillies, and they struck oil, and they were millionaires, and they moved to Beverly Hills. And they're there in Beverly Hills with all these big buildings and all these wealthy people and so that Jesus' disciples were pretty much Galileans. They were like country bumpkin kind of people. They were way up north, small little fishing village, or it'd be like you going to Washington, D.C. If you've never been to D.C., it's an impressive city. You see the Lincoln Monument and the Washington monuments, and you see the Supreme Court with all those stairs. It's like you're going to see God or something. And they do that on purpose to intimidate you. You're going to see the judge of everyone and the Congress, and they're impressive buildings. So Jesus' disciples from Galilee, sort of country pumpkins, are like, whoa, man, look at this place. It's incredible. They've never seen buildings like this, and monuments and gates, and Herod's temple is just a phenomenal place. He built a huge market right next to the temple, like a public market. And now, why do you think Herod built a big market, like a mall, like marketplace mall, right next to the temple? Because there's a lot of money in religion, and he knew it. He's going to have a whole mall there and sell religious products and services right out of the mall, Special books, special water, special little stones, maybe some sand from somewhere, and they just put it in a bottle and sell it to people. So they're like looking at these buildings, and they're just so surprised. But listen to what Jesus says. And Jesus said to them, do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left upon another that shall not be thrown down. Now that was a shocker. It'd be like us having a tour of Washington, D.C. Jerusalem was the epicenter of Israel. It was where the king lived. It was where the Sanhedrin, the high priests lived there. This is the city that the whole country had to gather 7 times, 3 for males, everyone. This was like the epicenter, the biggest city in the country. It was the capital, the city of God. And it's a pretty big complex. I've been there and to see the ruins. And Jesus, as they're marveling, they're surprised, pointing out the the gargoyles on the buildings and things. Wow, look at that. Jesus says, not one of these buildings, not one stone is going to be left upon another. So then he leaves the temple for the last time. This is all the old covenant is becoming obsolete very quickly. This building, which was at the center of their worship, is going to be gone. The entire system is going to be gone. It is nothing like the new system, the new covenant that God is going to make. Absolutely no parallels. You know, these, in the Old Testament, these animal sacrifices were all foreshadowing, patterns, and pictures of what God would do in the future. But now God is going to inaugurate very soon. This is the last time he's coming to his temple. He's going to destroy it, and he's going to birth the church, which is going to be a completely different way of having a relationship with God. Okay, so he leaves the temple. The disciples are really surprised. He goes down the Kidron Valley, because Jerusalem is a city that's surrounded partially by a valley called the Kidron Valley. He walks down there. He comes up to the Mount of Olives. And he's sitting down there, and his disciples are just shocked. They're just shocked that he just told that Washington, D.C. is going to be leveled. It'd be like, you'd say, what? I need to know more about this. So verse 3, now Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? So they're very shocked that Jesus just said this. These are massive buildings. And he said, not one stone is going to be left on another stone. It's going to be destroyed. The whole entire city is going to be destroyed. So now he's going to tell them three things. That as things get shaky, as the world starts crumbling, it appears to be crumbling, there's three things that he's going to tell the disciples that they need to focus on. And these are imperatives. The first one is, do not be deceived. When you see this happening, and you see a woman convulsing, and she's screaming, and she's in a lot of pain, and fluids are flushing out of her body, don't be deceived. Number two, don't be troubled. Don't panic. Don't freak out. Don't be troubled and spazzing out. And then the third thing is don't give up, because it's coming. It's going to be finalized. He's going to return, and a lot of times I've been in delivery rooms, and the women feel like giving up. I can't do it anymore. I can't push. Honey, you can do it. Push. I can't. I mean, I remember the first baby that we had. I was in Dallas where Kennedy got shot, Dallas hospital. Remember where he got assassinated? They brought him to this hospital. And this hospital where Lena had her first baby. We lived in Dallas. And it's a public hospital, so not a private hospital. And she was pregnant, and I go into the area where the women, and since it's a public hospital, you have a lot of foreigners in there. And it's a room probably at least this big, with bed, all women in there, so they're all in labor. I walked in there, as soon as I turned the corner, it was like, oh my gosh, there was like all these women screaming at the same time. They're all in one big public government-run hospital. And one lady, I'll never forget, she was saying, take it out, take it out. She kept screaming it over and over. And I said, oh man, so I just got the chills when I went, like, I got to get out of here. My poor wife. And it was something else. I tell you, they delivered 930 babies a month at that hospital. Dallas is a big, and it was a free hospital. So, but when you get close, don't give up. So Jesus is going to say, when you see these things happening to the planet, this isn't for you to be afraid. This is because you're his disciples. He's letting you know ahead of time what to expect. Don't be deceived. Don't be troubled. And don't give up, because it's when you feel like giving up the worst is when he's ready to come. He's going to be the new way is going to be right there. So he tells him now, and so the guys ask 3 questions. He tells them, they ask, when will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? So the first thing that he's going to answer is, when is this going to happen? He's talking about destroying the temple and the stones being toppled, all the buildings. When? When is that going to happen? Now, the way Jesus does this, he doesn't give them a perfect timeline. He gives them an answer, but he addresses the 3 questions. But it's, we know that it's been 2,000 years. We are still living in this answer that Jesus gave. But the first answer has been accomplished. AD 70, Romans came, and you know the story under Titus Vespasian, who later became a Caesar. His father was a Caesar. He was in Rome. The 7th Legion came, and they sacked and destroyed Jerusalem, and they destroyed the city. So the first one is, don't be deceived. The first thing he says, hold on to this truth. Verse 4, he says, this is the first thing to answer. Okay, he said, Jesus answered and he said to them, take heed that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, this is verse 5, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. There's that word deceive. Then in verse 11, he says, then many false prophets will arise and deceive many. Don't be deceived. That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. This is what Jesus talked about. Now, in context of what Jesus is talking about, he's absolutely, in my mind, talking about the Pharisees and the scribes who come to you in wool with these beautiful clothes, these garments, these robes, these hats. They're wolves in these sheep's clothing. In other words, this is the first thing that Jesus tells them. He doesn't say, oh, the earthquakes, oh, be careful for war. That's not the main thing. The main thing is that there is going to be tremendous deception in the world. That is the biggest threat to you and to me and to every Christian on the planet, is deception, religious deception. He says, take heed. That means to be aware of this danger. Watch out of this danger, that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying that I'm the Christ, and will deceive many. And then, as I said in verse 11, and then many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. So religious deception, as we get closer to these times, we can see all of these things happening. The biggest threat is a perversion of the gospel. I see this more and more. It's becoming almost difficult to go somewhere and hear people teach that do not mix law with grace. They twist the gospel. They're perverting the gospel. The gospel is about Jesus. It's about a personal relationship with the Lord. It's about being born again and having a personal relationship with him. It is not a religion. It is not a philosophy. It is not a denomination. It's not a set of doctrines or set of rules or ceremonies that you have to do, and that could be okay. But that's not what Christianity is about. Did you know, and I did this, I read through the whole New Testament once, this is just to find this. Every single book in the New Testament, and probably I didn't do the Old, every single book in the New Testament warns about false teachers, false prophets, false brethren, false. Now why does God tell us this over and over? Why is the Lord telling us this? Beware. Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I'm the Christ, and will deceive many. And there will be many false prophets will rise up and deceive the majority. The word many means most of the people are going to be deceived. They're going to be lulled and led away. They're going to be taken away from a personal relationship with Jesus. Jesus is a person. He's God, God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit God dwells in us. And just like any other relationship, you have to learn to be present with the person. You have to learn to be present with people. You can be with people and not be present with them. I'll give you an example. At one time, I was a very busy guy. I had 5 kids. And I ran 2 businesses. So I was super busy. And so we had to literally date my wife. I had to pencil her in on Fridays to be able to have a date without kids, and we had to arrange it. Everything was arranged. And I remember going to dinner, and I was still so busy, and I had, when the cell phones came out, they were like this, like huge. You had to have I had one of those, 35 cents a minute. I used to get like $1,800 a month phone bills because you paid by the minute. And I had a pager. There's a pager in the phone. This is before all these little phones. And I would be responding to different calls. And Linda, and I'm there with her. We're sitting there at the table. We ordered food and everything. And she says, Dan, can you just be present with me? Because this is what we do to God. We're there. He's present. We're at the table, but we're not thinking about him. We're not really engaging with him. We're like still thinking about work and thinking about this, and this is what I'm talking about, a personal relationship with a person where you are engaging and participating with him during your day, and you're thinking and talking to him, and what you're saying is coherent. And because this is going to be a big divergence from that you can have this kind of relationship with God. This is what he desires. He doesn't desire to be locked into some religious organization or some mediator. Jesus is your mediator. He is everything you'll need. You don't need anything else. Why? Because he will direct you to the people that he wants you around. Even the people, and you'll say, I don't like those people. But Lord, see, because you're in a relationship with him. How many of you have ever, it's easy when you're married. You talk to your wife, honey, I want to go to this restaurant. And she says, no, I don't want to go to that restaurant. And so you have a difference of opinion, right? So let's say a church is a restaurant. But then she'll talk me into it. No, I don't want to go to that. But honey, I don't want to go to that restaurant. Yeah, but no, I don't want. All right, I'll go to your restaurant. And so the Lord will, have conversations with us. And he tells me what church he wants me to be involved with and what kind of thing he wants me to be involved with. At first, I didn't hear his voice very well. The more you walk with him, you're going to realize he's very clear. God has no problem communicating. You should write that down. God has no problem, no communication problems. The problem is on my side because I already want something. I've made up my mind, and I want now him to agree with me. So I keep asking him, I'm going to obligate God to give me what I want. So this is the kind of, and it's really childish, and it's okay, he understands. But it's a personal relationship. Look at in Revelation 3. This is what Jesus feels about any man or any woman or any group having authority over you spiritually. This is how he feels about it. He doesn't like it. He wants to be the one in that place in your heart and in your life, personally, all day long. Verse 6 of Revelation 2:6. Now, Jesus is commending this church. And every church that Jesus has birthed, Jesus said, I will build my church. He loves you. He loves. It doesn't matter the size of the church. little church, little weird people there. He loves you. If he started the church, he's with the church. And, I love church. I love how beautiful is the body of Christ. Big, small, whatever. But this is probably a pretty big church, actually. But in verse 6, he says, but this you have, that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. So this church at Ephesus was very discerning. Paul had taught these people, so did Timothy, so did John the apostle. They had a lot of Apollos taught there at Ephesus. Several very prominent Bible teachers all taught at this church. So they were very discerning. And actually, let me just read the letter. I'll just start at verse 1. To the angel of the church at Ephesus, write, these things says he who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks before the 7 golden candle lampstands. I know your works. That's a beautiful thing. God loves you. He knows what we're doing. It's not condemnation. This is a commendation. I know your works, your labor. You guys labor for me, and your patience, and that you cannot bear those who are evil. This is a good church. They don't like evil, corruption, things that God doesn't like. And the Lord points us out. You guys, we have a lot in common. You guys love me. And you have tested those who say they are apostles and are not, and have found them liars. These are people in church, apostles, leaders, pastors. And Jesus commended them because they knew the Lord and they knew the Bible, and they can hear people talk and say, you're pointing me away from Jesus. You are not. You're putting law on me. You're trying to get me wrapped up in your organization with your denomination and all your rules so that you can trap me and make me feel guilty and feel terrible if we don't do what you say, that somehow you're not pleasing God. And this is the kind of thing that's very, very prevalent. And you'd have to understand the why of this. You have to understand the why. How did the priest eat in the Old Testament? Sin. I don't know if you've thought this through. How the priests survive by sin, because of sin. They had to bring the sacrifices. They had to bring the animals, the bulls and the goats and the sheep, and they would be slaughtered, and the priest would take home lamb chops that night so he can cook his. So the people sinning was a vital part of the priest being fed. The grain offering, all the offerings, the priest would get to take them home and eat and feed the family. So what happens when you stop sin? If someone were to pay for the sin of the world, and he would forgive the whole world, the sin issue would be resolved, right? But this is now going to put churches in a really bad place, because why would you give anything? Because the whole reason you brought that animal was because you were atoning for your sin. The priest was going to atone for your sin. So maybe I should just go on vacation instead of, spending the sheep. But they can twist this around. They can say, hey, you want more money from God? Well, then if you sow me your seed, 100, then God's going to give you 10,000. All kinds of shenanigans that people will come up with. So, but he says that he doesn't like, then he says he knows they're false prophets. And then in verse 6, he says, but this you have, that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. So these were false teachers in the church at Ephesus. This is what Jesus is warning about. Now, Nico is Nike in the Greek, and it means victory or ruler. And Lados is the people. The Nicolaitans were a group of religious people that lorded it over the people. They separated the clergy from the laity. This is the clergy. They're up here. They're close to God. You do what they say. And we are the laity that need to obey these people in order to get to God. So they become mediators, okay? Jesus, he says he hates that. He hates that when any man or woman get between your relationship and God. No. You have to have faith. You have to have your own relationship with the Lord. I can't give you a relationship with God. No man can. I can't say, oh man, God, I'm going to just transfer my relationship to Ben, and then Ben will know everything that you know, that I know, that we've experienced over the last 40 years. There's a lot of versions of false teaching. So let's get back. The first thing he says, don't be deceived, Jesus says. Take heed. There's going to be many false teachers. The core issue is how do I feel around this pastor? How does he make me feel? Am I like worried about my money when I go to that church? Am I worried about, I'm going to get condemned or called out? So the first warning is not about war. It's about deception in the end times. So the gospel, a gospel that adds anything to Christ's finished work isn't the gospel. It's a trap. If it says Jesus and baptism or Jesus and giving, tithing, tithing is not even a New Testament word. That's an Old Testament. Jesus and cutting the grass at the church or doing Jesus and membership, that's a trap. It's Jesus plus nothing. He did it all.
Thanks for joining us for part 1 of our study through Matthew chapter 24. Today we've been encouraged to stay vigilant against religious deception in these last days. Don't miss part 2, where we'll explore how to stay calm in spite of the chaos happening in the world around us. If you enjoyed this message, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more teachings. Until next time, be blessed.